So I've been asked to do this video a few times, and today I'm going to go through and tell you what tools I'd buy for carpentry if I had no tools and I was starting the trade today. There's so many different tools to pick from, so what I'm actually going to do is break this video in two halves. We're going to start with hand tools, and I'm going to make a list of the top 10 hand tools I would buy before even rocking up on site, before I even start a day in carpentry. And then the second list is going to be the first 10 power tools I would buy over the first few months to the first year of working as a carpenter. When it comes to carpentry, the first tool that comes to mind is going to be a hammer. These are all the hammers that I own, but if you were going to start carpentry, I'm recommending getting a steel framing hammer. Now there's two reasons why I would choose a framing hammer over your typical curved claw hammer. First one's obviously being the claws. The framing hammer has a sharp, flat claw. This becomes super handy in so many different ways. They're great to step into timber to pick it up. You can almost use it as a chisel to pry timber apart, and it still works obviously to pull nails out. And the other advantage about the framing hammer is how long the handle is. Since it is a lot longer than the typical curved hammer, you're going to be getting a lot more power when you try to hit things. Now, even though this is a hammer I would buy if I was restarting carpentry, this isn't the hammer that I currently use. And the reason for that comes down to price. This costs $60 AUD, and my current day-to-day hammer is this titanium Boss hammer. This thing costs $400 AUD, so you definitely wouldn't be buying it if you were just starting out at carpentry. But the reason I do use this one instead of a steel hammer is because it's a lot lighter, easier to swing, and you get less vibration coming up through your elbow. Now obviously the next thing we need is going to be a tool belt to hold the hammer and then every other tool we get as well. These may not technically be a tool, but they're super crucial, and you definitely need a tool belt before starting carpentry. This was the first tool belt I ever bought, and I recommend getting this one or a similar tool belt to this. Now this thing cost me around $100 from Bunnings, and I recommend buying a tool belt around that same price tag. Especially when it comes to hand tools, one thing I recommend doing is buying a cheaper version of the tool, and then if and when that tool breaks, that's when you upgrade to a more expensive version. That's the same thing with the tool belt. I started with this cheap $100 tool belt, and then when it started breaking on me and I started getting holes at the bottom of the pouches, that's when I upgraded to a more expensive tool belt. I've actually gone through a few different tool belts in my time, but this is the current one I'm running. And the tool belts are also quite similar to hammers when it comes to price. This obvious tool coast setup costs around $500 opposed to the cheaper $100. Now if you are watching this video and you are about to start a carpentry apprenticeship, it is expected that you rock up on your first day with a tool belt filled up with your hand tools. And for this video, I'm actually going to be going through the first 10 hand tools I would buy for the tool belt. And then after that, we're going to do a second part of the first 10 power tools I'd buy. And that'd be the tools that you start buying over a few months once you started your apprenticeship. And one of the most important hand tools you're going to need is going to be a tape measure. I've actually recently done a video where I bought a whole range of tape measures and I tested them head to head to find out the best one. And the Stanley Fat Maxes have always been my favorite tape measure. One thing you're really looking at when it comes to your tape measure is you want a nice, thick, solid blade so you can actually outreach your tape measure, hook over timbers, and get the measurements that you need. I've always been using the Stanley Fat Maxes. I've gone through and obviously tried a few different tapes along my journey, and I always keep coming back to these tapes as my favorite. So obviously if you got your tape, you're going to be measuring measurements. You've also got to get a pencil to mark those measurements down. So this is a flat carpenter's pencil that I'll definitely recommend getting. And one thing you need with a carpenter's pencil is also going to be a knife so you can get in and sharpen your pencil. Now when it comes to the knife, there hasn't been a brand that has really jumped out and been better than the rest. I've always been switching between the brands. At the moment though, I have been using this Irwin knife, so this is the one that I would get. And going back to the tape and pencil, if you're going to be marking your timber, another tool that you're going to need is going to be a square to square up that timber. Now this is a combination square and a speed square. They both have their different purposes. They're both good for different things, and a lot of carpenters are going to have both of them. Now if you were starting carpentry and you were only going to get one square to start with, I'd probably lead towards a combination square. And the reason for that is that you can actually move the square up and down to get different measurements. And one thing that becomes really handy with this is that you can get your little 3mm quirk so you can mark out where your architraves are going to go. It's hard for me to say that I'd go with the combination square because I've always got the speed square on me. I think these things are awesome, and especially if you're doing a lot of framing and you're trying to get your degrees, that's when the speed square comes in handy. Now the next tool that we're going to get is going to be a chisel. To start with, I'd recommend getting a 25mm chisel. This is the exact size that you're going to want to be using when you're installing door handles. So you want to make sure you keep this chisel in good condition, keep it nice and sharp for your finished carpentry. And even if you start with one chisel for carpentry, carpentry, you're definitely going to want to start getting a bit of a collection of different chisels. Firstly, you're going to want to get different sized chisels, and then also chisels for different type of work. I've always got my sharp, clean chisels for doing finished carpentry, and then some rougher chisels where they're not as sharp, and I use them for framing and demolition work. Now the next tool I would get is going to be a 1 meter folding ruler. And I'm putting emphasis on the folding ruler because when I did start my apprenticeship, my employee at the time told me to get a meter ruler. I didn't realize you needed to get a foldable ruler to put in your tool belt. And I just got a steel ruler that was a meter long and obviously too impractical to hold on me at all times and keep with me. Now having this ruler is obviously going to be very easy to go through and measure stuff with. Another benefit of having the meter rulers is that they're actually 10 millimeters thick. And that's the same thickness as plaster. So if you were going to go through and install a door jamb like this, you want your door jamb to be sitting out 10 mil for plaster, meaning that these rulers are the perfect tool to put against your stud like that, pull your door jamb out until they're flush with the ruler, and then you can screw it on in place. Now the next tool we're going to be getting is a chalk line. Now we use chalk lines for so many different things. When we're marking out a house and working out where to build the walls, we're going to be flicking chalk lines onto the concrete slab. We use chalk lines to flick boards where we need to cut them, and all the way through to decks where we're going to be using chalk lines to flick a straight line for where your screws are going to go. You can definitely get away with buying one chalk line to start with. Right now I've got blue chalk in it. The blue chalk that I use does rub off. So this is what you're going to be using if you're doing a deck and you want to flick on top of the decking boards with a chalk line that you can rub out later. When it comes to doing a setup for a house, we're using a chalk line that has oxide in it. And this is chalk that doesn't rub off over time, which we obviously want if we're flicking out a slab. We can't be using the blue chalk because if we flick out a slab and it rains at night, we're losing all of the marks that we've done. So this is obviously another tool that you can start off with having one, but over time you're going to need multiple chalk lines to have one with the oxide and one with the blue chalk that will rub off. Since we are doing the top 10 tools, we've only got room for one more hand tool, which is a bit hard because there's so many different tools that we use a lot on the work site. For the last tool though, it's actually one that I forgot to bring in with me today for this video, but the last tool I would recommend buying is going to be a nail punch. So that's the top 10 hand tools that I would buy if I was going to start carpentry. They're the 10 tools that are going to go in your tool belt that you're going to be wearing on you at all times, and the 10 tools that you need before you rock up to your first day on site. Now we're going to jump into the power tools, and we're going to go through the first 10 power tools I'll be buying as a carpenter. When I started my apprenticeship, one of the first tools that I needed to get was my own circular saw, which was a corded circular saw. As an apprentice, you're probably going to be on the saw cutting for a qualified most of the time. When I started carpentry, battery tools weren't powerful enough to replace the corded circular saws. So I'm pretty sure I went out and got that within my first week, and that was my tool that I brought out every day and kept using. But obviously these days, it's a lot different on site. You've got more powerful saws like Hikoku's 36 volt and Makita's 40 volt. And if you are using these saws, you can definitely get away with not using the old corded saws. Now these are two of the most powerful battery saws out there, but in saying that, even the 18 volt battery tools are more than capable of replacing cords these days. So if I was to restart carpentry, I don't think I'd go out and waste some money buying a corded saw. In saying that too, I definitely would recommend going out and buying a battery saw by itself. If you are going to get battery tools, you definitely want to get a combo kit so you get the best value for your money. So you want to make sure you get all your tools in a big combo kit, and even better, you want to wait until one of the big tool stores have a massive sale so you can go through and get things for the best price. So the first combo kit that I'll be looking at getting will be a 6-piece combo kit similar to this one here. Out of these tools, there's really 5 main tools that you need. Firstly, as we covered, you need the circular saw. I'd argue that the saw is actually the most important tool that a carpenter uses. On top of that, we've also got a drill and driver, which you're going to be using almost every day. We've got a reciprocating saw, which as an apprentice, you're probably going to be using a lot to fix mistakes, and then also a grinder. So these are the 5 tools that we need. Normally they come in a combo kit though that also gives you a blower or a torch. This isn't going to be a super important tool that you need, but it's actually going to work out cheaper getting these tools in a combo kit with the blower than buying them by themselves. The biggest question though is what brand would I go with? I pulled the Hikoku tools out right now because these are the tools I'm actively using. At the start of the video though, you saw I had AEG, Makita, DeWalt and Milwaukee tools as well. And if you're familiar with my channel, I love switching between tool brands, trying different tools out. And every single brand out there are going to have some tools that are better and other tools that are worse than other brands. And if you're unsure on what tool brand to get to start with, I recommend getting the same tool brand as your co-workers. It becomes super handy when you're working on site and your battery dies and you can quickly interchange them with your co-workers. You can swap over tools and just get stuff done. That's why for some of my tools like this Milwaukee grinder and DeWalt drill, I've actually marked them with purple paint. And that's not to stop thieves stealing my tools. That's just so me and my co-workers know which tools are mine and which tools are theirs. Alright, so we've got 6 tools here. We've still got 4 more tools to go. And one thing you might be thinking of is, why didn't I just go out and buy a 10-piece combo kit? The 10-piece combo kits are going to be your best value for money. You're going to get a few other tools like your hammer drill, you'll get a multi-tool. Depending on the brand and the combo kit, you'll get a few different tools in there. Now, obviously, a 10-piece combo kit is going to cost more money. When I was starting off as an apprentice, it actually took me a fair while saving up enough money just to buy my first 6-piece combo kit. At that time, that was actually a Milwaukee 6-piece combo kit, and it was a grind getting that, let alone thinking about buying a 10-piece combo kit at that time. Now for this video anyway, since we're only doing 10 tools, I don't want to do a 10-piece combo kit because we also need to get some nail guns. And the 2 nail guns I'll go for are these 2 that I'm using at the moment. We've got Hikoki's framing nail gun and then Hikoki's finished nailer. Now in my opinion, I do think that these Hikoki guns are the best battery guns out there in the market. And it does become handy as well if I'm using the same guns and same tools with the same battery platform. Now, depending on what you're doing for carpentry, you may be looking at getting pneumatic guns as well, which are guns that run on an air hose with a compressor. And they're going to be quicker and more powerful, and you don't have to worry about your batteries dying while you use those guns. But that's opening a whole different can of worms. There's so many different tools you can get for carpentry. At least if we have these 2 tools, we can do majority of the work. Now the next tool I'm going to go with is going to be a planer. I've actually only got AEG's planer at the moment. It's the one that I use. Obviously you're going to want to get a planer that has the same battery platform as the other tools you're using. But if you're starting off, I'd recommend getting a corded Makita planer. That's the first planer I used. I would still have it to this day if my tools didn't get stolen. And that's going to be at least half the price than buying a battery planer as well. The last tool that I'm going to go with is going to be the hammer drill. Right now I've been using Hikoki's hammer drill, but when I did start carpentry, as well as getting the corded planer, I also had myself a corded hammer drill. The hammer drill I brought when I started carpentry was actually an Azito hammer drill. Azito is a DIY cheaper tool that you can use, and some of the tools are surprisingly really good and hold up on work sites. The same thing happened though as my Makita corded planer. I bought that tool, it was awesome. I got a lot of use out of it, and then that one got stolen as well. But getting yourself a corded hammer drill and a corded planer is going to help you save so much money when you're starting off in carpentry. So these are going to be the first 10 power tools that I would buy for carpentry. If money wasn't an issue, I'd probably switch a blower around for a multi-tool or another tool that actually gives us some use. Having this arsenal of power tools, along with all the hand tools we went through, is going to set you up to do most jobs in carpentry. In saying that, these are the tools that you'll be using, but you're still going to have to look at getting other things, such as your levels, your ladders, and so many other small specific tools that you'll need to get depending on what projects you're doing. Now, if you are looking at buying power tools for the first time, I want to know in the comments below on what brand you're thinking of getting. And if you already have all your tools and you were hypothetically to restart and get a new brand of power tools, I want to know which brand stands out for you